Hi, I'm Suze Shaner with Sage Leadership Strategies, and I'm your host today of Community Forum. And I have the great pleasure to have with me Robert Markowitz, who is also known as the Guitar Guy, a children's entertainer, an author, and recently published the novel Clown Shoes. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you, Suze. I'm grateful to be here.
Well, good to have you. Now, I know you've done a bunch of interviews lately, and I'm going to try and get underneath some of the answers to some of your questions from those interviews. We'll
Cool.
talk about the book in a little bit, but before we do that, for our viewers, you were a lawyer, changed careers, became a clown, children's entertainer. So I want to talk a little bit about your career change. I know that what I got from your other interviews is that it seemed like deep in your bones, you always knew you were a writer, an artist, but you didn't pursue it, maybe due to parental expectations. So I'm curious, when do you first remember that, gee, I'm like hiding the secret that I'm really an artist, but I can't do it?
Yeah, no, you're definitely onto something there. I remember way back, I remember being 6 or 7 and writing some sort of little tiny play and getting all the kids in the neighborhood to come and put it on. And we did it in my basement, and we got the adults to watch us. So, and then when I was about 7 or 8, my friend Adam and we had this, which was mostly a make-believe rock and roll band, but we wrote all sorts of songs for it. We had so many songs for that make-believe rock and roll band. And I even remember about 10, another friend named Kenny, we passed back a novel back and forth. So we sort of did a relay novel. We'd pass it back and forth, and I'd write a little bit, he'd write a little bit. So yeah, those signs were there pretty early.
Yes. I mean, that's pretty young, 7, 8, 9, 10 to be, I mean, one thing, all kids are performers and play and whatever, but to be also writing novels in a band. So it's kind of like, it sounds like it was always there, but then there was this pressure from I don't know if it was pressure, but your parents' expectations that you would be a lawyer for what, prestige, financial security. What were some of the messages that you got?
Yeah, I think you hit on 2 of them right there, exactly what you said. But I think it was also an immigrant thing because my grandfather, who is the first here, I'm talking about my father's side right now, but my grandfather was a baker, and he was an immigrant, and he was a baker, and he worked 14-hour or sometimes I think even longer days in walk-in ovens, and my grandmother had to use a wire scrub brush to get all the dough off his skin when he came home at night. And
Oh, wow.
he used to tell my father, "It's your America." And then my dad was a teacher, and then later a guidance counselor, actually in Mamaroneck. And it just seemed like there was an expectation that I would even take the immigrant saga one step further and become a doctor or a lawyer,
Right. Okay. So you go to law school, you become a criminal lawyer, and you're successful out in California. And then I understand that you started having some physical symptoms, like your body started breaking down. You weren't happy. Like what was the day that you're like, that's it, I'm done?
Yeah. Well, yeah, you hit it on the head. I wasn't happy, and more particularly, I'd stopped being able to feel much.
Uh-huh.
There's a line from that Eagles song "Desperado," and something about you're losing your highs and lows. Ain't it funny how the feeling goes away? It was a little bit like that. Ain't it funny how the feeling goes away? I was losing my ability to feel like anything inside. So, and my wife will tell you that I'm oblivious to my surroundings usually. Like, I don't care if the room is in disarray or whatever. But one day I walked into my office, and for some weird reason, I couldn't stand the color of the rug, which is
That's it. It's the rug. It's all about the rug.
All about the rug. That sounds like it could be a song, but you know, I and that was so not me, Suze. I mean, I couldn't care about the rug, the curtains, nothing, none of that ever mattered to me. But I just couldn't stand the color of the rug.
So you were like, that's it? Like, I'm quitting, or what happened?
Well, I also sort of at the same time I was volunteering for a little kind of kids group that where the kids met instead of going to church. They'd meet at this place, and these kids were playing duck duck goose, and this little 6-year-old girl was running around, and she slipped and she tore her stockings and she bloodied her knee, and she jumped right up into my arms. And let me tell you, as a lawyer, I almost never saw a kid. So the fact that she just jumped right up into my arms, I just thought, and I felt something. I was beginning to feel. I thought, I got to do something about all this. And I decided I'd give the law practice 9 months, and I was leaving. And I did it. I made more money in that 9 months than I had ever made in my law practice. And there was some temptation to stay. I could put a down payment on something with this money. But I thought, no, you better not. You're going to lose your soul.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I mean, I wonder if some of you're making more money than you ever made because you saw the end in sight, but you said like the soul was the trade-off. So then you went to Mexico for a couple of years. Was that,
Yeah.
did you find yourself there? I mean, what did you do in Mexico?
Well, did a bunch of stuff. One thing I did was I joined the writing group, and they let me in, even though 2 of them were published writers with big 5 publishers. So I felt good about that. And then I kind of found spirituality there. There was some people who were into it, and I sort of got into it. That one of them led a drum circle, like you. So I got into that, and I had sort of played with it before, but I got into it deeper. And then I also had I had a relationship with an American woman there for quite a stretch of time. So I did some work too. I taught English. I got a work visa, believe it or not, and I taught some English. So it was an interesting time, but enough was enough after a while.
So it sounds like with the teaching English, you had enough to kind of sustain you, but then you did all these other personal and spiritual explorations to kind of have you, I don't know, the way you described it is almost like reclaim yourself, reclaim your soul, get back in touch to be able to feel on a day-to-day basis, not kind of numb yourself out, if you will. So you came back to the States, but then you had to go back. You went back to law again, and then you got into entertainment. Take us through that.
You're right. I did go to California. I went back to California, and I was on my way to feeling, as you said, but I was still pretty numb in some ways. And eventually I just decided I was going to go. I got offered this really good job, and anybody would have taken this job, and I turned it down because gut feeling, I didn't want it. And I went back home and I asked Mom if I could live with her. And Mom was not so crazy about the idea, Suze. I'll be honest with you. But she said yes.
Well, how old were you at this point?
37.
Yeah. Okay. So you went back and lived with Mom when you were 37. A lot of people were like, "What? What are you doing?" And then she said, you said, I'm leaving law. And she's like, "You're ruining your life."
Exactly.
So, I mean, how did you navigate that space? Because clearly you were listening to something, but it wasn't quite yet defined. You didn't really take a leap. Like, how did it get to a landing for you?
Yeah, that's a very good way to put it. So again, I was, as I said, I was still kind of numb. I wasn't feeling a whole lot, and I was depressed, and I was desperate. And one day I was reading the want ads, New York Times want ads, and office job after office job. I was really clear I didn't want to work in an office. I found out later I'm ADHD, which might explain some of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw this weird ad. It was like, come down to, Avenue D in Manhattan, and we'll train you in one evening to be a clown for kids parties. And we'll give you a little kit, and then we'll call you and send you on your way to different parties, and for almost no pay. I mean, very little pay. But I felt something inside. It was like this stirred me, and at that point, I was so desperate that I needed a shot of, you would know all these names, Shakti, Chi,
Yeah,
life
yeah,
energy.
yes. I mean, this is like, well, when you're depressed, yes, you don't, your life energy is like numbed out, as you said, but it also sounds like what attracted to you, was a sense of maybe fun. I mean, it brought some maybe joy back in. Like, hey, that could be fun. Why not?
Yeah, it's fun, and I've often always loved spontaneity. I love anything that has where things are fluid and there's a possibility to be spontaneous.
So this cracked open a window of another potential reality. You had fun with it. It was like, hey, you did more of it. And how did you get it? Because, to be honest with you, when I was in ninth grade, they asked you those questions in the yearbook on like, what's your secret ambition? And I wrote to be a clown in the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. I thought that would be really fun. Didn't think that I would actually ever do it. So, but you did. So at what point did it become real for you? Like, hey, I could actually make a living at this.
Yeah, well, after a while, after I did maybe about 7 clown gigs, I was enjoying it, but I thought, I'd really rather lose the face paint and lose the clown suit and pick up my guitar, because I had played guitar since I was in my teens, and I wasn't extremely good at that time. I got a lot better in all the years I've been doing it now, but I was okay. I was pretty good, and so I started to do that. And Suze, the honest truth for all your viewers who are thinking about making a career change is that at the beginning I sucked. And people told me that. I once did a show I did a little audition for 5 librarians up in the Hartford area. One librarian had been nice enough to invite all her friends, and they were all going to maybe hire me. And this was a tour I did when I first started. And I did my thing, and it was really clear while I was doing it, they weren't really reacting to it very enthusiastically. And then no eye contact, Suze. No eye contact after the show.
Did they tell you? Did they give you feedback, or you just got it?
I got it. The feedback was silent and polite, like New Englanders are, but it was clearly, you suck.
Okay, so you went back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
Traveling around without face paint and all that get up is probably easier. So how did you, because you've been doing this for so many years now and you're successful at it. So what did you do to kind of hone your craft, and how did you know that, like, okay, this is what I want to do when I've arrived?
Well, the thing about material for children is that you do it. I started to have a lot of jobs with a lot of little nursery schools and daycare centers and, sometimes libraries. And I would just continue to produce material, write songs, test them on these kids. And it's a process. And sometimes you're really excited about a song you wrote and you can't wait to test it on the kids, and they're reacting to your excitement. It takes a while before you know whether the material is actually good.
Yeah. So clearly this is a passion of yours. What do you love about working with kids?
Well, I think initially what I really liked is their openness. Another thing is that even before, like now I play guitar really well and my voice got better, and I know a million tricks. If a show is flagging, I know a million tricks about how to get the kids interested again. And, I have a lot of experience. But at that time, I had one thing. And the one thing that I think the kids felt right from the beginning, and I felt, was I had, like, the kid inside me could communicate to the kid in them. And there was just a certain connection that I just naturally have with kids. And it's just, sometimes, honestly, it sounds weird, but honestly, sometimes kids just look at me on the sidewalk and they smile at me. Sometimes it happens in restaurants. That's just you have to develop it. That alone is not enough. But yeah, I had that, and then I had to develop all the skills to go with it.
Well, it sounds like, if I could we've talked a little bit about a career change, but also in terms of mental health. I mean, it sounds like, you were depressed because you weren't getting fed or fueled in some way by your work. You found work that was much more personally rewarding, and you've said that it was a catalyst for personal growth. So I'm curious, how you would define personal growth, and how this kind of got you out of desperation, depression, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I'll just be absolutely honest about how I define personal growth. And the way I define it today probably wouldn't be the way I defined it then. But the way I define it today is understanding, realizing at whatever level is possible that you're not your body, you're not your thoughts, you're not even your emotions, that you are something that's watching your consciousness, that's watching all those things. And how does that translate? Well, if I've been married for 22 years, and if my wife and I kind of go at it a little bit, and she says something that invokes some anger in me or something like that, I will, in my better moments, I will watch it. I'll just watch that happen. I'll let it go where it needs to go, but I won't identify it. And I identify with it means acting it out, and I won't push it down either. I won't repress it. So that's my definition of spirituality: understanding that you're not actually your thoughts, you're not actually your emotions, you're not your body even. But how did that help me then? Well, I think the thing that helped me then is that I was actually going for happiness. And at that time, the best I could do was, I liked hanging out with kids and I liked playing music. But that evolved into really understanding that happiness was an inner game. But going for happiness in the beginning was what led me to all of those things.
Well, now some people would say, what are you, nuts? You've got this lucrative law career and you're going to give it up to go be happy. I'm just saying, like, the cynics, the skepticals. So it's a trade-off in terms of, even financial security, prestige, whatever, in terms of being that lawyer, having that impact. You have a very different impact in the world, and shaping and connecting with kids. So, and that was also a risk financially. So how did you kind of, I mean, you're lucky you had your mom's place as a cushion, but kind of how did you navigate that space? Because, when you're self-employed and you're always looking for your next gig, kind of how did you navigate that from a personal growth perspective?
Suze, I don't want
being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, no, you're right. I don't want to underplay any of that. There were times when, with my wife and I, there was a couple of winters when we couldn't afford oil, and we had to burn wood all winter. And honestly, when the house got below 30 degrees, when the weather outside was below 30 degrees, the wood stove just wasn't enough. It was cold. So no, what you're saying is absolutely right. I did suffer as a result of that. And there's no way
that could put a strain, obviously, on a marriage. And so did you have points at which you were like, gee, maybe I should just go get a job?
Yeah, I did. In fact, and I did go get a job. That did happen once in my long career as a children's musician. I got a job teaching in the South Bronx. First year I taught music, and that worked really great, and everybody loved it. And then it was a special program. You weren't really allowed to teach music because I didn't have a teaching degree. I was going to school at night, so weren't really allowed to teach music. And I found that, to be honest with you, I wasn't good at teaching special education, which was what I was really supposed to be teaching. So that because I think because of my ADHD, quite honestly, it was a
Well,
lot of
that's
organization.
yeah, it does. It does. That's a very special population
Yeah,
too. And requires like very unique set of skills on top of, yes, when one has ADD, it can be challenging because as a teacher, it looks like people just get up there and talk, but there's a lot of planning, organization, structure.
exactly. I'm weak on those things.
So you did that for a bit, and then so you kept at it, and obviously you've been able all these years to make a living at it, and then you've also written a couple things, with the most recent book being Clown Shoes. And in full transparency, I ordered it this week and I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I read the book jacket. But I do know that you started out wanting to write it as a memoir and it evolved into a novel. I know the way you've described it is, well, I ratcheted up the stakes to make it more interesting. What I want to ask you though is, at what point did you decide you wanted to write a memoir? What was your original objective? Then we could talk about how it morphed into a novel, because those are very different genres and very different audiences in a way.
That's true. I had been writing for quite a while, and I had been writing different things. I wrote about my daughter. I've been writing different things. And I hadn't really settled upon what was going to really work, what really my story was. And I went to take some writing classes in the living room of a writer named Susan Shapiro in Manhattan. And she said, "Oh gosh, it's so obvious what your story is. Your story is your career change from lawyer, from criminal lawyer to clown to children's musician, and that's what you should write about." So, in her class, I wrote a 900-word essay about that, and it got published in the New York Times. And when it got published in the New York Times, it kind of went viral. It had about 500 reader responses. It was the second most emailed article in the New York Times for 3 days. Um, it kind of blew up, and some people were saying exactly what you were saying to me. How could you leave law and do something that's so unlucrative? I have a family. I can't do that. And some people were like, "You've done what I've always dreamed of
Yeah.
doing." So I got
Yeah.
a lot of emotion. And then I thought, okay, this obviously struck a vein. I'm going to write a memoir about it. But when I started to, kind of addressing your second question now, when I started to write that memoir, I started to understand what the deeper themes were. And I naturally wanted to amplify those deeper themes. And you can't do that if you're just sticking to the facts. I also wanted to raise the stakes of the novel, um, so that I could talk about the types of things I wanted to talk about, which was like status
Yeah.
and just identity. Like,
Well, Robert,
yeah,
you did a gutsy move. I mean, look, leaving your law practice. If somebody left a law practice and they went to go do something else, one thing, but you went first to be a clown, and then a children's entertainer, and it's, you're living your passion. It's a gutsy move, and everybody wants to do that in theory, but when
right.
it comes down to, hey, you have no oil in the winter, this is what it's like. It's not for the faint of heart, because it's year over year over year. To be an entrepreneur is not easy, and then to be an entrepreneur in the entertainment field and with children, so it takes a lot of guts. So I'm not surprised that it didn't evoke a lot of emotion and a lot of polarization of emotion. People would land on one side because
Yeah.
it's a statement. You made a statement. So anything else you can say about some of your greatest challenges and rewards in this work?
Yeah. I think as far as rewards, I love to communicate. It gives me tremendous satisfaction to communicate with other people effectively. and I get to see that. One thing about being a children's performer that's not like being a writer is that there's immediate delivery of the product. You're there, the kids are there, you're playing your guitar, they're responding to it in real time. With writing, of course, you wait a long time, you do a million edits, you do 25 drafts, it's different. So I love to communicate, I love to be spontaneous. I always feel, look, there are times, you talked about challenges too. There are times where it's just a job. There's times when you don't feel like it and you show up and it's just a job. But really, what would you rather be doing if even those times it's just a job? Would you rather be sitting at a desk, or would you rather be in a circle of, beautiful, bright-eyed kids and playing your guitar? I mean,
Yeah. So we've got like 2 minutes. It's gone by so quickly. So what could you say in terms of where do you hope to ongoingly take this work in terms of your performing, your writing, your speaking, your
yes.
Expressing your multi-talented creativity?
Yeah. Well, I'm really intent right now on publicizing Clown Shoes. I think there's a lot in it for people, and the initial reaction has been very positive. And I'm doing all sorts of things. I've been speaking all over 5 states this summer, doing presentations at libraries that involve Clown Shoes. I've also taken a cue from my 20-year-old daughter, who's like the TikTok queen, and I've been posting cartoon videos on TikTok. And believe it or not, yesterday I posted one that sort of blew up, and my publisher knows exactly how many copies are sold. I don't know, but I saw that my ranking, on Amazon went from 11,000, like I was the 11,000th best book, to under 3,000.
Okay, well,
which was amazing.
Well, you have a unique story that's personal, and you've also embellished it to engage the reader, clearly. So if anybody had any questions or comments about anything that we've talked about today, how might they reach you?
Oh, well, you can reach me on email, and it's omdcv@aol.com. That's Oscar, Mark, David, Charles, Victoria. omdcv@aol.com, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Robert. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And until next time, I'm Suze Shaner with Community Forum.
Thank you so much, Suze.